All right, it's time to take you deeper into the world of sport. We'll start up from taking you to Riyadh, where it's going to happen this night. Francis Ngannou and Anthony Joshua had their way in, but Ngannou did weigh more than 20 pounds heavier than Anthony Joshua. As the heavyweight rivals, they hit the scales in a phenomenal shape during that final face-off ahead of that Friday's blockbuster main event in Saudi Arabia. Ngannou came in at 272.6 pounds. That's just ahead of his second professional boxing match against Anthony Joshua following that October's split decision loss to Tyson Fury. While Anthony Joshua followed up at 252.4 pounds to arrive just a pound heavier than his resounding win over Otto Wallin in December. We saw some vuvuzela sounds. They blurred, courtesy of Ngannou's Cameroonian supporters, while Rocky Balboa's theme song was filling the set. During that weigh-in for the two boxers who would take the stage in a pristine condition before engaging in one last ice-cold stare down. You can see Anthony Joshua. Ngannou did say, "I saw fear in his eye when I stared at his face." But Joshua is not taking any chances here. He's looking straight into the eye of Francis Ngannou ahead of that heavyweight bout between himself and the Cameroonian MMA star. And a lot are talking about this. What is it going to be? Who is going to have the last laugh at the end of the day? Now, to join us in this conversation will be one who knows how to break it down. He follows the MMA so much, the UFC so much, and now follows boxers from the world of unboxing. He will be having to break this fight down for us. I've got Cal Demand, a fight commentator, joining me all the way from England. Thank you so much, Cal, for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me as always.
It's a pleasure to always have you. I'm a bit surprised here, you know. I did see that weigh in, and with Francis Ngannou coming in 20 pounds more than Anthony Joshua, but he looked a bit shredded to me. I never thought that he would weigh more. Everyone is getting hyped about this muscle from Francis Ngannou, but we forget that real deal, that it is brain, big brain, over the brawn. So, tactics and strategy will win the fight in this encounter, not biceps. Am I right, Carl? Looking at the fact that Ngannou is a bit shredded in that weigh-in.
Yeah, I mean, they're both, incredibly shredded and massive guys. But I think that there probably is a little bit to look into in regards to Ngannou weighing heavier. The fact of the matter is he isn't going to have to chase Anthony Joshua around the ring like many people thought he would have to with Tyson Fury. So I think he can afford to be a little bit heavier. He's not going to have to worry about output as much, I don't think, because the common consensus would be that Joshua is a little bit easier to hit. And will probably trade a little bit more with him than Fury did. So I think there is something to the weight. It is an interesting part going into this fight that I didn't expect to see. But, ultimately what happens in the ring and the game plans that both of them come in with, who the better man is on the night, will be the most telling factor. But I do think there is something to Ngannou weighing a little bit heavier.
Okay, I'm hoping that works in his favor. But big question, can Joshua become a three-time champion? Remember that the 34-year-old has not been the same dominating the fight since he was knocked out by Ruiz in 2019. But his latest resurgence is an evidence that he's thriving under that new coach, Ben Davison. Can this version of Joshua compete with any heavyweight in the world, Carl?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, yeah. I mean, the first fight with Alexander Usyk, I thought was a tough watch at points for AJ. Second fight was a bit better. Still, maybe not as competitive as you would hope. I think Usyk and Fury are still very big tests for AJ. I know that Fury didn't look quite as good as he has in recent years when he fought Ngannou in October. So Usyk is still the big one, I think, that looms over Joshua, whether he would be able to even get a third fight with Usyk after losing to him twice, and whether he would be able to beat Usyk. That's the one for me that I'm not too sure on. But in terms of competing with everyone else, yeah, I think he showed that he can do it. He showed that he could do it in the past. But I think this version of AJ is probably better equipped to be at the top level of the sport than any other version of AJ we've seen in the past.
Okay, so much confidence coming from you, Cal. But another question is, who is going to win? Ngannou will fight with the same spirit he brought in that surprising effort against Tyson Fury. But that won't be enough in this fight, which is how a lot are adding the odds maker to see it. Joshua is about to go 4-1. That's the odds for those who are predicting the fight. You're saying, okay, maybe he would get the 4th win after coming from that loss against Alexander Usyk.
Yeah, it's a really tough one, I think, because that Fury fight throws everything that we thought we knew about Ngannou and his boxing skills in the air. But at the same time, was it Ngannou having a great night? Was it a bit of Fury not having a good night? It's hard to kind of weigh that up because we've only seen Ngannou box one time, so we don't really have anything else. Do you think Fury
underestimated Ngannou in that fight? Because Joshua will not be doing that in tonight's bout.
Yeah, I think definitely that there was certainly an aspect to it. I think that he did respect Ngannou, but I think he was very, very surprised by his boxing skills, but also how long he was able to compete with him for. He didn't slow down at all, and a lot of people thought he would. AJ obviously will not make that same mistake, I don't think, and that kind of lessens the surprise factor that we have with Ngannou, but I still think that surprise factor is kind of there because we don't know whether he looks like that every single night or, like I said, whether he had a particularly great night, Fury had a bad night. We still don't know. So there is still a bit of unpredictability, I think, around Ngannou, but to me, that just makes this one a lot more exciting.
Okay, let's look further right now. I've got this question that's been bothering me a long time. What is next for the winner? I mean, Tyson Fury did say that he would like to face the winner between Joshua and Ngannou, and it's almost certain that the winner for Joshua and Ngannou will face the winner for Fury and Alexander Usyk. So what is next for the winner of this bout?
Yeah, I think it's the obvious next step to make, to have the winner face the winner of Fury and Usyk. I imagine that they will have 2 fights. Hopefully both of those happen this year. So maybe you're looking at start of next year, maybe for that fight. I think especially, there's a few different ways that those 2 fights could play out to where it's an obvious one. If Ngannou beats Joshua and Fury beats Usyk, to do Ngannou and Fury again would make a lot of sense. Or if AJ wins, even AJ and Fury would be a huge fight. The only tough one, I think, like I said earlier, is if AJ and Usyk win, can you do Usyk and Joshua for a 3rd time? I'm not too sure, but it's the obvious fight that's out there. These are the 4 biggest names in the heavyweight division, I would say, right now, when you look at their last performances. So obviously you've got people like Deontay Wilder and Joseph Parker, who, is also here. But I think that's the obvious one to do. I'm pretty confident we'll get to see it, to be honest. So that's exciting for whatever happens tonight.
Okay, you can see from the comparison here that Anthony Joshua has got 2 inches, ahead of Francis Ngannou by height. Then by reach, we see Francis Ngannou having 1 inch. Of course, and that reached ahead of Anthony Joshua. Weight too. I'm looking at the weigh-in. Francis Ngannou weighed 20 pounds heavier than Anthony Joshua. How is this going to come in whose favor? And how would this, come in the other person's wrath? Let's see. How is it going to be, Cal?
I think that, again, to go back to the weight, Ngannou maybe knows that the fact of the matter is a lot of people are saying this is an easier fight for him than the Fury fight because Joshua isn't as elusive, and also we've seen Joshua get stopped before. I know that Ngannou dropped Fury, and Fury's been dropped, plenty of times in the past, but we've seen Joshua get finished in fights in the past, and I think that, Ngannou's thinking that with that extra power, he only really needs 1 shot to land. Obviously, with his ferocious power, you could say that against any opponent that you put him in there with, but and Joshua, is very defensively sound. He tends to fight, off the back foot with his jab. He can go forward as well. Just very technical, his last few performances. So I think the reach will be an interesting thing because I would expect Joshua to lean heavier on jabs, whereas Ngannou, I think, not that he's going to get reckless and start throwing punches, from his hips, like a lot of people thought he would against Fury. We've seen he's a far better boxer than people gave him credit for. But at the same time, I think him landing something big will be whether or not he takes this fight, because I just think Joshua is very, very technical, and he's very, very good at controlling fights once he gets a lead.
Okay, what if Joshua loses Cal? Joshua has already had a battle back from 2 down times. He's shocking upsets in that fight against Ruiz and the 2 losses against Alexander Usyk. Those are down times for Anthony Joshua. He had a 2-3 record from 2019 down to 2022. He's already a 2-time champion and evidently in good shape financially because he's taking the bigger purse of this share. But why does Joshua have to go through mortification of getting back in line? Why does he have to go through a lot to get back in line in his boxing career?
To be honest, I think that, if I was Anthony Joshua's manager, if I was Eddie Hearn, I don't know if I would have pushed for this fight. I know that AJ wanted it, and fair play to him for doing it, but it does kind of feel like there's a lot on the line for him. And if he beats Francis Ngannou, a lot of people will say, oh, well, Francis Ngannou, is an 0-1 professional boxer. What have you really proved? I don't think that's fair because I think Ngannou is far more talented than a lot of people, gave him credit for. And I think he is kind of getting the credit a little bit more this time around. But there's a lot to lose for Anthony Joshua. If he loses this fight, he's been a world champion multiple times in the past and had to battle back. But to do it again, it's kind of, it gets to a point where you're starting to think, when does diminishing returns come into this? When does it become just that slightly further away from him to be able to do it? And a loss to Ngannou would be a really big hit to that, I think. So there's a ton on the line for Anthony Joshua. And I wonder whether if he suffered another big setback against Ngannou, whether, there'd be a whole lot of motivation left for him to keep on going and try and reclaim those heavyweight belts once again.
Joshua had to go through that all the way from 2019 to 2020. So I'm hoping that he would not open that same door to losing to Ngannou for the night. But what do you think the killer punch will be? What do you think the killer tactics will be from both boxers in tonight's bout?
Well, Anthony Joshua, people always talk about the old Joshua. Are we going to see the old AJ? And I don't think that old AJ really exists, to be honest. Even the Otto Wallin fight, his last performance, I thought was his best one in years. One of his best performances of his career. And he was a little bit more aggressive in that one. And that's what people have called for ages. Obviously, being aggressive against a guy that hits as hard as Francis Ngannou is very, very scary. So I expect AJ to go back to fighting, very smart and beating Francis Ngannou with the experience he's accumulated at the top level, beating him with the sweet science, the jab, the footwork. For Francis Ngannou, obviously it's always about landing that one knockout punch, and he wasn't able to put Fury away. Do you think they will go the 10 rounds straight? Or you think the job will be done around the 7th or 8th or maybe 5th round? Like against Arthur Wellin, we had seen him the 5th round. Anthony Joshua came all out in that encounter. Do you think the job will be done before the 10th round? If Francis Ngannou wins, I could see him stopping Anthony Joshua. I don't know if I would say the same for Joshua, though. Like I said, he looked great against Otto Wallin, and his finishing ability has always been one of his best attributes. But I find it hard to see him putting Francis Ngannou away, just for the fact it would open him up to taking some big shots back. So I don't think he'll risk that personally. Like I said, I think that if he does get the win,
are we expecting a knockout, Kyle?
I hate to say, this event is called Knockout Chaos, and I hate to say that there won't be a knockout. But I think if Francis Ngannou, if somebody gets knocked out, I think it'll be Francis Ngannou that gets his hand raised.
Francis Ngannou is a hard hitter, Kyle, and compared to the punches Anthony Joshua can bring, I'm on the side of Francis Ngannou anyway, not on that Anthony Joshua side, but I'm expecting to see the most exciting bout ever in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. We have been talking to a fight commentator, Cal Demond, all the way from England. Thank you so much for being with me on the show today, and I will be waiting for your reaction after the bout for Saturday. Do have a lovely day.
Thank you. Should be good.